Silence has descended, so good time to start. Good morning, everyone. My name's Eric Lay. I will introduce the ones either side of me. Oh, there's an extra one up here. On the far right, we got Paul Young and Matt Collins, both from Devon Highways. Mike Kenny, our planning manager. Committee clerk Beverly Driggs. Legal advisor Damien Hunter and vice chair Jasmine Chesters.
Good morning.
Just a couple of little things, please. Switch off mobile phones. Toilets are through the door, first on the left. And the first item, we're being filmed, so if the request, you know, if there's a request, we're going to go with it. And a personal comment. For the first time in years, I've succumbed to a common cold, so if I sound thicker than normal, apologies. I can see one.
Bad terminology.
Okay, all right, right. We move on. Move on to the agenda. Apologies for absence.
I've received none, Chairman.
Number 2, to prove the correct record of the minutes. I've got an issue here. I think Mike wants to raise something. Reference Ben Quarry.
Yeah.
Okay, you go first.
The minutes of of Monday, the 8th of May. Can I just say that Councillor Matthews was also present? You've got Councillor Greenslade and Councillor Matthews was also present.
I'm referring now to the April minutes, in particular Ben Quarry.
Same line.
Mike.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've received an email from the applicant's agent, Simon Fife of Savills, and I'll simply just read out the email, and if you want me to comment, then I'm happy to do so. The minutes do not reflect the motion on which the committee voted. Our notes confirm...
No.
This is Ben Quarry, 61901. The minutes do not reflect the motion on which the committee voted. Our notes confirm that Councillor Lane moved in favour of the recommendation as set out in the agenda report. We have no record that Councillor Lane or any other person proposed any amendment to the officer's recommendation. My clear memory is that he did not. The 2 additional items, A and B, were referred to, and again those are on the beginning of your agenda today. So the 2 additional items, A and B, were referred to as 2 of a number of matters raised by Councillor Lane during his presentation to the committee. But neither these nor any other of the matters raised featured as part of an agreed amended motion before the committee. I have no record that the 2 items were specifically referenced by Councillor Lane when he moved in favour of the planning application, and neither the committee clerk nor the legal officer present announced an amended motion. On the basis of the above, we consider that the minutes of the meeting do not represent an accurate record of the committee's resolution to grant planning permission. The 2 additional items should therefore be removed from the minutes and the matter regularised at the meeting of the planning committee on the 10th of May.
What is your recollection?
Chairman, with respect, I did say to Mike, note these points, and actually a couple of these points which you've actually raised in here actually was recorded, and actually did also mention about the mazar trees, which you actually haven't got in here, but it was actually part of that recommendation. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm talking about, you know, I was asked to be noted as part of it, and that was with our planning manager. I mean, at the end of the day, it can be resolved because the planning manager can actually deal with it anyhow, but it was asked to be noted.
Would you like me to comment?
Yeah.
My recollection is clear. It's as Councillor Lane has said. Because I recall saying that if that is the view of the planning committee, I'm happy to take that on board. And I said that with both. However, what I would say is, if there is a difficulty in delivering A, that's the cycle connection, I am convening a meeting with the Public Rights of Way officer and the County Council staff, inviting ward members along as well. That meeting's not yet taken place, and if there are difficulties in actually delivering that for reasons that are drawn to our attention at that meeting, then I will be bringing that particular item back to Planning Committee. But I can't tell you that at the moment. We've not convened the meeting.
You happy with that? Okay. So you all in favour of that? Right, okay. Items brought forward, you please know that I have none. Declaration of interest?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Moore has declared a disclosable pecuniary interest in plan application 62187 and Councillor Warden has declared a personal interest in plan application 58603, Chairman.
Okay. Moving on, agree the agenda between part A and B. There is no part B. So we move on to the development control and number 58603 and it's Mike Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Application 58603, this is Highbullen at Chitterham Holt. I'm starting a presentation which I'll keep as brief as possible. You have heard this application before, I believe about 18 months ago, but I do apologise. There is a mix-up on pages 13 and 14, and I did send out an email yesterday apologising for the circumstance that part of the agenda report still retained reference to the application we've just talked about at Ven Quarry. But I've tabled the corrected version. You've already seen that information. I refer to it again within the body of the report in any event. The information has been before you as a planning committee in any event, so it doesn't make any difference at all to the analysis or the recommendation. But nonetheless, I do apologise for that mix-up. I didn't get the opportunity to proofread the report before it was published. And I've also tabled for you the latest consultation response from the Parish Council, which extends to a couple of pages. It reiterates the concerns they previously voiced, but I thought it as well to actually put a copy in front of you so you can refer to the same. It's dated the 30th of April.
It's not been tabled.
I've passed it through this morning, yes. So it's the 30th of April. It essentially reiterates the concerns they put forward before, but again I thought it would be useful to have it in front of you and you can refer to the same should you wish to. So essentially you have considered this application before. The changes are really twofold. One is that it's proposing the revocation of a Planning Permission 40248 that was not before you before, and that is a block of 11 apartments with the associated occupation and traffic generation from that. The applicants are now proposing that that be revoked on a voluntary basis, and that is part of the recommendation to Planning Committee today. And the second point, it comes down to our highways, and I would mention that we do have, or reiterate, we have two highways officers here this morning, Mr Collins and Mr Young. That's looking to propose the scheme, but without the 3 passing bays that were the original resolution of Planning Committee. I've just set out what the changes are. I will update members in terms of additional letters of representation that we've received. I'll mention a couple of points about the economic business case and ecology, just to update members, then I will just refer to highways. So if we go to page 2 of the agenda, so the proposal, 58 lodges and a 16-bed hotel extension, exactly as considered by you before, and of course you've also had the benefit of a site visit. It's looking to revoke Planning Permission 40248, and this is in itself an amendment from an earlier scheme that proposed 94 holiday lodges. So we're now down to 58 holiday lodges. You're familiar with the site, you've been out there, but again I just want to point out the location of the site. The red line is the site of the actual proposed lodges, and that's a land ownership plan showing the full extent of the Highbullen estate. Just in terms of site and surroundings, I don't need to say very much about it. You've been out there to look at it for yourself. I do make reference to the local highway network. It refers to Newlands Hill, but that actually is not the main route that's being formally proposed. Newlands Hill happens to be one of 4 routes that serves the site. The characteristic otherwise is of rural lanes that serve Chippenham Holt. And there is a particular issue which we'll come on to regarding Newlands Hill. Now, the reason for the report to members is that when it was last considered on page 3, a specific provision was the provision of and improvement to passing places on Newlands Hill and associated signage. Now, because that was a specific provision, that's coming back to you today because that is not able to be provided. And I've made it, I hope, clear in terms of the explanation on page 3. Obviously, I'm assuming that you have read the report, but the situation is at the time of determining the application in December 2015, we did receive representations regarding to the effect that the land identified to accommodate the passing bays was not actually in the ownership of the County Council. The position was uncertain, and both authorities progressed the application on the basis that it had and did form part of the county highway and could therefore accommodate the highway improvements. The County Council responded to our consultation on that basis. So our legal team were instructed to prepare the legal agreement in January of last year, but subsequently the County Council has been provided with definite information that indicates that the land identified as appropriate for 3 passing bays is in private ownership. As a consequence, the application is now brought back to Planning Committee at the request of the applicant to be reconsidered on the basis of revised information that is before you, and that includes the revocation of the apartment block, of the 11 apartment block permission that I've referred to. Just to provide the full picture as well, running in parallel with the present application is an identical outline application. It's been twin-tracked, and that application is 62183. Now that in itself understandably caused some confusion, particularly with the public regarding consultation responses. Should this application be approved as is recommended this morning, that twin-tracked application will be withdrawn, and the applicant has so advised. The offer to give up this extant permission 40248 only relates to the present application. So for the purposes of considering the present application, however, consultee responses and representations received in respect of both have been taken into account. So notwithstanding they fall to be determined on their own merits, I've read all the letters and representations and consultee responses in respect of both applications. I did attend a meeting of the Parish Council, a special meeting of the Parish Council about 2 weeks ago, or just before Easter, where I did explain that situation as well. So if we go on to the body of the agenda report, I've set out the consultation responses. I do have to refer to very quickly a number of recent representations. There's going to be a separate presentation by Mr. David Ball that we've loaded onto this PowerPoint, and that's from an objector to the scheme, but that's going to follow my presentation at the appropriate point. But we have had additional letters, and I will be providing the committee clerk with this information from a number of properties. Chapel's Farm on the 4th of May, a property called Cholwells on the 23rd of April. There was a letter sent to all the Planning Committee on the 28th of April as well, to which I make reference. There was a further letter from Cholwells on the 4th of May. A letter from the old post office on the 3rd of May. A letter from a property called Butlers on the 27th of April. One from Whitmore Lodge on the 21st of April. One from a property known as Lower Spycott, or S-P-I-E-C-O-T-T, on the 17th of April. One from, I think it's called Featherstones, on the 19th of April. one from Watertown House on the 26th of April, one from Pierce's Farm on the 11th of April, and I received two on Monday from Sunnycott on the 8th, and from a Claire Payne, which didn't give an address, on the 8th of April. So procedurally we have had a substantial number of representations, but I did want to update members on that. And I've also referred to the latest consultation response of the Parish Council, and indeed that's been tabled for you. The application still falls to be considered on its own merits, so I haven't neglected or omitted the original consultation responses. It makes for a longer agenda report, but nonetheless, as a planning committee, you still need to consider all the representations and all the issues. So they've all been set out to you again, and that's why I make a distinction between the original information that you've considered before, and the additional comments, and those are the most recent comments for you. So, for example, on page 5, with regard to the Highway Authority, I've set out the original information. There was a revised scheme, and so I set out what the authority have said there, and that you'll notice that they had a concern regarding the sustainability of the location of the site, which is for us to consider. And that's why they recommend a refusal in terms of that sustainability argument, but it's for us as the planning authority to consider that. And then you'll see specific reference to Newlands Hill and the geometry at the junction on the foot of page 5, and I will come on to that, and no doubt objectors will as well. So just going through the remainder of the report. The Highway Authority's full consultation response is appended to the agenda, and that's at the end of the agenda, 20th of March, and I will be referring specifically to that consultation response in a few minutes. You've got the other consultees set out there. If I could just turn to page 8 of the agenda. I just wanted to update you regarding ecology. There were concerns that the ecological information had not been properly reviewed, and that came up at the Parish Council meeting. So in response to that, I discussed the matter with our ecological specialist, and he's saying that the mitigation measures are appropriate. It has been appropriately dealt with. However, he is recommending that we reword a condition in respect of lighting mitigation in terms of any protected species. So I'm putting forward that we have an amended condition with respect to the submission of lighting details. But otherwise it's set out as on the agenda. Again, the full responses are set out. If I can turn to page 9 of the agenda. Again, it came up at the Parish Council meeting that the business case had not been coherently argued and had a number of assumptions that were questionable. So I followed that up with a discussion with our Economic Development Officer on Monday, and Economic Development Unit have confirmed that they did consider all the information and that they are recommending that the application be supported because they think the business case is logically argued and is worthy of support. You've already considered this, but I'm just updating you with regard to further discussions. So I have followed that up, and I have spoken with our Economic Development Unit. Representations, well, you see reference to 155 letters of objection and 24 letters of support on page 10 of the agenda. And I have made reference to a number of other ones that we have recently received. They do not raise any different issues, they merely reinforce and they argue coherently against the scheme, but I have summarised the issues on pages 11 and 12 of the agenda report. There's a complicated planning history to the site. and rather than go into detail, I've appended in full that planning history at the end of the report. I'm happy, of course, to take any questions regarding that. So if we come on to the development proposals, again, you have been out on site, you've seen the proposals for yourself, but I'll just remind the members and indeed any members of the public about what is being proposed. So there is a master plan for the site. This doesn't seem to be working, but essentially it sets out the existing Highbullen at the centre of the site. And you see the red lines where the 58 holiday lodges are to be sited. And there's a group of 21 lodges to the east, and you can see. So I'm just trying to get this mouse to work. Well, I think it's fairly obvious there are 21 lodges to the east of the site, and then going through, that's the existing fairway taken on a clear day, and again you see it there. And there's a hotel extension. This forms part of the application to the south of the existing hotel, and again I know members are very familiar with the site, so I'm not going to go into any detail. You've seen it all for yourselves. That's the existing hotel, and there's a grouping of 37 holiday lodges, as you see those rectangles, to the south of the hotel complex. And lodges are to be adjacent to the existing line of trees. So in terms of the habitat and the ecological value, I think you've got a fairly clear idea in any event, but these are to be adjacent to the existing tree lines and sited on existing fairways, which has the consequence that the 18-hole golf course becomes a 9-hole golf course. Again, just showing that these are indicative designs. So those are the planning proposals. I've tabled for your information the updated, corrected economic business case, but you've already seen that and you've taken that into account. But nonetheless, to be clear, I have tabled for you the updated information relating to capital spend, investment, new job opportunities. So turning to page 14, we come on to highways and access. And I've referred to the relevant policies of the development plan. I'd also refer you to the National Planning Policy Framework, which you are all very familiar with, and section 4 of that framework. You are familiar with that, core principles in terms of the highway considerations, but again I would make specific reference to that. And I will refer you to a number of slides to help in that particular respect. In terms of the highway considerations, again, and I'd emphasise it to members of the public, the planning committee have visited the site. They've been to Newlands Hill, they've got out of the bus at the bottom of Newlands Hill, they've looked at the junctions. There was one access point I believe was not visited. The bus, I understand, was running late due to a mechanical failure, and in terms of Kingford Hill and the A377 was not looked at by the site visit. But members know the area, they know that road, and I don't think, I would say professionally, that makes a great deal of difference to your consideration of this application, the circumstance that you could not visit that particular junction. So I just make that point. So members have seen the junction for themselves. What I'm showing you here is what's now been submitted recently in respect of this application, which shows what are described by the applicant's transport consultant as existing passing opportunities. So that's along Newlands Hill, and the applicant's highway consultants, professional highway consultants, have identified 21 passing opportunities, as they're phrased, along Newlands Hill. And that's been further specified here in terms of measured dimensions. So there is information that's been provided. It's not necessarily accepted by all parties. I understand that, but nonetheless, this is for members to look at for themselves, and I'll come on to the junction dimensions as well. So, the material change in this application is highways and traffic impact. The relevant guidance is set out in your local plan, and in particular paragraph 32 of the National Planning Policy Framework. And I'm going to read that out to you because it is important to this application. So paragraph 32 of the NPPF states, all developments that generate significant amounts of movement should be supported by a transport statement or a transport assessment. This application is. In fact, we've had several iterations of the transport statements with transport notes. Plans and decisions should take account of whether the opportunities for sustainable transport modes have been taken up depending on the nature and location of the site. That's an important proviso. To reduce the need for major transport infrastructure. Second bullet point, safe and suitable access can be achieved to the site, can be achieved for all people. And thirdly, improvements can be undertaken within the transport network that cost effectively limit the significant impacts of the development. Development should only be prevented or refused on transport grounds where the residual cumulative impacts of development are severe. We've had this time and time again before Planning Committee, but it's still the prevailing advice. So I'll just read that last line again. Development should only be prevented or refused on transport grounds where the residual cumulative impacts of development are severe. The County Council are recommending that this application is not such as to give rise to a severe traffic impact, and are recommending conditions, and it's for us to make a decision on the application. The County Council are not recommending refusal, they're recommending conditions, and I've set that out at the end of the agenda report. Now, in terms of Newlands Hill, it is fair to say that there is some uncertainty regarding the exact dimensions of the visibility distances at the bottom of Newlands Hill. And we've had measurements from the county undertaken at a certain point in excess of 100 metres to the right, from an X distance of 2.4. Again, you're familiar with the terminology as a planning committee. And we've had the objectors saying, well, really, including their transport consultant, it's really no more than about 40 metres. And I've been down there on site. I was down there on site 2 weeks ago with the objectors, and at the time, again, it's depending on growth of hedgerows, etc., but it wasn't very much in excess of 40 odd metres. But I'm not a highway engineer. The people I was with are not professional highway engineers. But notwithstanding any uncertainty over the actual distances, the circumstance is it's considered to be safe and convenient by the Highway Authority. It was considered by yourselves as a planning committee when you got out of the bus and looked at the site for yourself and the junction that it was safe and convenient, and the police safety officer has said there's no accident records, it's safe in their view. So notwithstanding whether we're talking 40, 60, 80, 100, it's safe and convenient and is not the reason for refusal of the application. But nonetheless, there is some uncertainty regarding the actual dimensions. But you've seen it for yourself. And the County Council's response has been clearly set out. They've been challenged on this. They're here today, but they've made it quite clear that remains their professional highway view. Again, the traffic generation from 58 holiday lodges has been questioned. The applicant's professional highway consultants have put forward a view in terms of the occupancy of 2.8 as the average. The Highway Authority have not uncritically accepted that. They said no, we do not agree with that. We're saying it should be more like 4 movements per day, not 2.8 movements a day. So they haven't accepted uncritically the highway consultants' view. They've raised the bar in terms of that, but it's still considered to be acceptable in terms of paragraph 32. And even if the figures were doubled, it would still be acceptable. So, you know, we can spend a lot of time talking about the geometry of the junction and the visibility distances, and no doubt that's going to be raised, but at the end of the day, it's safe and convenient is the professional view. Again, I'd refer you to that consultation response. So even accounting for any uncertainty over visibility and any uncertainty over the anticipated traffic generation, the Highway Authority and your professional officers as well do not consider the development such as to be in conflict with paragraph 32 of the NPPF. So I can't stress that enough. I know there's a difference of view, and I understand that difference of view, but the test will be whether there is evidence to suggest that the cumulative impact is severe. The Highway Authority referred to the unsustainable location of the site, and again that's referred to in the NPPF. Now, there are parallels actually with the Ven Quarry application that you considered last time, and that was for 158 lodges and a 40-bed hotel. And the sustainability of the site there was considered as part of the overall planning balance. And because of the economic and other benefits coming from that scheme, it was considered that that issue in itself was not such as to suggest that the application should be refused. So taking into account the economic and social benefits and the mitigation measures that have been outlined on the agenda and put forward, including the travel plan and the revocation of the apartment block for 11 apartments and operational changes on site, it's considered to be compliant with policy. Now, we can look at some detail regarding policies. The point I would just make at this point is policy TRA1A of the adopted plan does refer to the need of development to have good accessibility to a choice of transport modes. That's a very prescriptive approach in that policy, and that policy is not aligned closely with the National Planning Policy Framework that I've just outlined. So in terms of the weight to be given to that, I would suggest that the NPPF is beginning to take precedent, and that policy is being deleted from the emerging local plan, and we have a new policy, DMO5, which is far less prescriptive. That policy has not been challenged in the hearing sessions held before Christmas, and so it's anticipated that that policy will go through in terms of the emerging plan, and of course it is compliant with the National Planning Policy Framework. So that we can have an argument about the relevance of the policy that's been set out coherently by a number of objectors, but nonetheless the policy landscape is changing, and the NPPF is one that we should be looking at, as well as the emerging plan. So, having regard to that, and again highway colleagues are here, on balance it's not considered to be in material conflict with the local development plan, and on that basis reference to a particular High Court case, Staffordshire Borough Council versus the Secretary of State, is not considered to be applicable. The circumstances are quite different. In any event, we've not read the entirety of the judgment, but there's not considered to be a material conflict, and on that basis the recommendation on the highway grounds is that it should be approved. Just to finish off, Chairman, if I may, because I do know that the highways are the central part of this present debate, I have set out in some considerable detail in any event the highway issues. So what I've been talking to you in the last couple of minutes is not actually set out as such on the agenda, but I set out clearly, I hope, the highway considerations there. Just taking you through the rest of the agenda report. Well, design and scale of the lodges, well, I think you've seen some of the, just again to remind you, the revocation, by the way, of the permission, that's the site, and they've carried out some works already to implement the permission. That's extant permissions on the site, and the one we're talking about is 40248, again existing facilities. I just wanted to show you, because this is the running order on the agenda, what the indicative designs are. I don't think it's central because this is only an outline application, but that's the designs for it. It's likely, in fact, to change, I have to say. Those were at that time, and I don't think that they necessarily will be the case afterwards. There's no further updates in respect of the remainder of the agenda report. I've referred to the ecology, so just moving on, if I may, Chair, to the conclusion on page 28 of the report. The statutory purpose is to contribute towards delivery of the Sustainable Development Agenda, so page 28, and I refer you to what you already know in terms of the material planning issues. I do refer to the meeting between local residents and planning officers that took place on the 29th of October. So I did go down to meet the Parish Council on the 20th. I don't mean the 29th of October, do I? I don't know why it says that. 10th of March, I'm sorry. 10th of March, page 29. There was a meeting. The County Council have given comments on the points that I summarised, which I'm quite happy to refer to. Sorry. Chittlehampton, what did I say? Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I've just had pointed out to me it's Chittlehamholt, Holt, not Chittlehampton. I'm sorry about that. It was Chittlehamholt, Holt, Satterley and Walkley Parish Council on the 10th of March. So I've set out the issues that were identified at that meeting, and we have got comments from the Highway Authority regarding the points made if you want me to go through those. But turning to the end of the presentation, I have set out on page 31 and 32 into 31 and 32 the planning balance. So, in terms of the planning balance, the proposal does represent a substantial financial investment into the local economy, and that's detailed in the business plan and the business plan provided by RPS, but also the applicants themselves. So that's into the local economy. I have verified that with economic development as of Monday, and they support it in terms of the economy and investment. So in terms of the economic role, I've set out on the third paragraph to that page. It's quite clear that it is supported. So it meets that particular strand of the Sustainable Development Agenda. In terms of the social dimension, again, I refer to the provision of employment and improved and extended recreational facilities. And there will also be the positive knock-on impact in terms of tourism spend into the local economy, and also use of facilities, of course, by the local community. I look at the environmental dimension as well on pages 30 and 31. And in terms of the sustainable location of the site, it isn't considered the most sustainable of sites. It would be, I think, naive to suggest it is, because there is a lack of public transport, cycling or pedestrian facilities. But that is typical of many, many other sites within Devon, of course. And we had a similar proposal only last month at Planning Committee. Paragraph 14 of the MPPF makes it clear that development should be assessed against the policies of the framework as a whole. And it's considered that the economic and social benefits of the development are such as to outweigh any concern over the specific matter of transport choice. And I then go on to say, in the absence of a formal objection from the Highway Authority and also the emergency services, which I neglected to mention, but they have not maintained an objection, the localised impact on the local highway network is not considered to be such as to outweigh the economic and social benefits of the proposal. And I've made the point to say this is not to downplay or ignore the clearly argued representations that have been put forward, including ones that were made directly to me at the meeting with Chittlehamholt Parish Council on the 10th of March, and indeed on site with a couple of the objectors. They are very clearly argued and very well set out, and I must say I have some sympathy for them, but I'm advising you in terms of the professional planning response. So I do understand the concerns, but in terms of the planning response, and I have spoken, I would say, with the development manager for the county in terms of highways on Friday, Mr. Brian Hensley, and he's made it quite clear that in his view there are no sustainable highway objections to refuse this application. So, having regard to that, the recommendation to you, and acknowledging the concerns, is that the application should be approved, subject to the heads of terms and the revocation of the planning permission, and subject to the conditions that have been listed, including the amended lighting condition in respect of ecology. So on that basis, Chairman and members, the recommendation to you is one of conditional approval.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. I'm looking to the two highways gentlemen. Do you want any comments at this point, or?
I think that was a very comprehensive report.
Very good.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Chair, can we have a little bit of clarification from highways while they're there? On page 3, it says there's more limited works at Newland Hill. Can we be told what those limited works would be? And are the signs in the area that some councils feel inappropriate, are they going to be upgraded?
So just looking at page 3. Do you mean in regard to the previous consideration?
The report to members, it says on 3 paragraphs up the bottom line there, and it says the more limited works to Newlands Hill that excludes provisions for new passing places. What are those works going to consist of?
There are no works to be carried out on Newlands Hill. The previous consideration was that there would be provision of 3 passing places, and that is not forming part of this application.
In other words, it appears to refer to the last application.
It says recent report to members, and that is in it, and it says and more limited works to Newland Hill, that now excludes the provision. So you are saying that you were going to do some works there. You know, you're saying you're not. Is that right?
Could I clarify that? Yeah. It might be simply terminology. It's, I mean, I'm showing you the existing passing opportunities, so it's as described there. It's not proposing to carry out any work, so apologies for that misdescription. It's not clear, is it?
Thank you.
Is there a question? Can I ask a question, Chairman?
I was going to come to speakers
Fine.
and questions
Just one
afterwards.
question,
Right.
a clarification, because at the last meeting when we were discussing whether we would go there on a site meeting, I did say to Mike, had the applicant approached the owner of those other parking places which you can't get, and you did say yes. Now, can you clarify that they have actually contacted, because that's what you told us?
I don't recall that, I have to say, because my understanding is the applicant has not contacted.
Yeah, well, you told me at
This-
the last meeting.
Right.
We are dealing with the present
I just
application.
Yeah, okay.
wanted
Right.
clarification because of the parking spaces you're talking about.
All right.
Right, I've got 19 people wishing to speak. They're split roughly half supporters and half objectors. I'll just make the point, 3 minutes, and that will be rigidly enforced. You don't mind that, do you? Because there's so many. Kicking off with Dave Ball.
Can you drive the
I can,
mic
yes.
for me, Mike? That'd be
As long as I don't need to refer to my own.
Morning, committee members.
And I request, please refrain from duplications. You might find it difficult, but please try your best.
Sorry, bear with me. I'm no good without a mouse, it appears. Let's have a look. Try that again. No. Okay. I might have to ask you to look.
Is that one at the top?
It's Dave Ball, yes it is.
Chairman,
I'm
can I
glad
just,
you came along.
I need to, can I just declare a personal interest, because I think I actually declared a personal interest previously, because I actually had land across the valley. I didn't need to, but I thought it'd be right to declare it. So are they able to declare it now? But there's no effect, but I just thought I'd declare it, just for reference. Thank you.
I can reach to there.
Yes.
I can hit myself, that's
Oh,
fine.
you want to do
I'm
that?
fine, I'm
Okay.
okay, thank you. Good morning, committee. My name's David Ball. I've lived in the parish for over 17 years. I'm currently a serving parish councillor, but this is a personal statement. It's clear from what's been said through Mr. Kelly's report and what he's emphasised about the importance of the professional consultants that he uses, that the resources within the planning department to scrutinise applications are quite limited. However, I'd like to just make a quite clear statement here. All of the opinions that you're being told are in the future. They're not facts, they're opinions. And anyone who is similarly qualified has an equal right to assess the information and come up with an alternate opinion. When the villagers first saw this application, the initial thought was, basically, this isn't going to fit, it's too big. But we knew that our gut feeling wouldn't carry any weight. So we fundraised, and we commissioned 4 expert consultant reports, one on planning, one on transport matters, a chartered civil engineer specifically on junction safety, and Devon Wildlife Trust on ecology. You may not be very familiar with those reports. They are all in your information pack, but unfortunately they're not explicitly referenced in the planning officer's report to you today. So you have to go hunt them down. Given there's a clash of opinions, how can you judge which opinion to give the weight to? Well, I would suggest, in the same way you judge a builder or a plumber, you look at past history. So that's what I'd like to do now, specifically on transport. Okay, the first proposal was improve head post. So the applicant specialist consultants did a design for the junction, not Devon County Council, the applicant's specialist consultants. The villagers' consultants said it's not to standard and it's unsafe. We lobbied on that basis, it was withdrawn and taken out of play. So the second application comes in, improve access via Newlands Hill. Once again, the consultants do the job, here's a design, it can happen. You as a committee were not happy and conditioned it with the section 106. That's now failed. Once again, the villagers' consultant's opinion has been proven to be correct. So now we're up to version 3, which is change the assessment, we don't need it, in our opinion. Our consultants' opinions have been consistent all the way through and have been proven to be correct. So now it's up for you to decide as the LPA which of the consultants' views you think is going to actually come to be true. We believe it's the 4 professional organisations we engaged. The applicant believes it's his consultants. Look at the history. I would ask you to give great consideration and listen to the other parishioners who are speaking today. They are not giving their views, they're giving our consultants' views, professional views. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Tony Kilvington.
Good morning. I'm Tony Kilvington. I live at Pierce's Farm, which is next to the Highbullen estate. I object to the proposal for many reasons, but would like to speak today about access and transport issues. A decision on this application is in danger of being made on the basis of speculation about the number of daily trips that users of the proposed lodges may make. The Highways consultation reply takes no account of the characteristics of the access routes, deliveries to the site or road safety issues. And we are told that each application is considered independently, but Lord Justice Mann in North Wiltshire District Council versus the Secretary of State for Environment ruled that, and I quote, "One important reason why previous decisions are material is that like cases should be decided in a like manner so that there is consistency. Consistency is self-evidently important to both developers and development control authorities, but it is also important for the purpose of securing public confidence in the operation of the development control system. I would like to list some previous refusal decisions made by this district council. Application 51998 at Firebeacon Lane, Walkley, was refused in 2011 because, I quote, "The roads giving access to the site are, by reason of their inadequate width and poor horizontal alignment, unsuitable to accommodate the increase in traffic likely to be generated, contrary to policy TRA 6. Application 55863 at Honiton Road, South Molton, was refused in 2013 because It is remote from adequate services and would increase the need for travel by private vehicles, contrary to paragraphs 14, 29, 32 and 34 of the NPPF. Also, increased use of the junction with the B3226 would, by reason of limited visibility, be likely to result in additional dangers to all users of the road, contrary to paragraph 32 of the NPPF and policy TRA6. Application 55093 at Barton Wood East Anstey was refused and appealed. The appeal was heard in 2014 and the NDC decision upheld. The inspector considered that although the number of vehicles would not be high, driver conflict along these lanes would be bound to increase, and access for refuse and emergency vehicles would also be likely to be made more difficult. Access to the Barton Wood site is similar to that for Highbullen. My purpose in speaking here is to request that in the interest of consistency you employ the same reasoning in determining application 58603 that has been used in refusing the applications I have mentioned. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Charles Moberly.
Charles Moberly, parishioner. I object to the application. At the beginning of 2014, it was recognised by both Highways and Planning that there should be no further development at Highbullen without improvements to the surrounding road network. This is from the decision notice for the Palazzo 56496. I quote, "Following the Highway Authority's concern over the cumulative impact of the number of developments on this site, any further development that increases the traffic movements to and from the site will require highway improvement works between the site access and the B3226. We've now had 3 incarnations of 58603. The first did indeed propose changed access to the B3226 at Head Post. A parishioner pointed out that the so-called improvement would have resulted in head-on crashes on a sharp bend on a 60 mph road. Both the applicant's consultants, AWP and Highways, argued for a long time that that junction was safe. We persisted and were proved right. That first incarnation of 58603 was withdrawn. The second incarnation proposed the creation of the new passing places on Newlands Hill. We repeatedly pointed out that these could not be created without encroachment onto private land. Again, we were proved right. Again, AWP and Highways assessments have been discredited. So where are we now? The applicant has done the only thing left to him: fiddle the figures by carrying out a new survey in February, the slackest month of the year, make a trivial withdrawal of an application which wasn't even mentioned in AWP's and Highways calculations before, and pretend that there wasn't a traffic problem in the first place, even though all his previous actions and the Palazzo approval had indicated that there was. And where will construction traffic be routed? The applicant has made great play of the fact that it will not be routed through the village, and nor should it be. So where is it proposed to be routed? It's from the south again, through that junction at Head Post, the one which has already been shown to be impossibly dangerous, unsafe for cars, let alone lorries. That junction can't be widened further because it's tight up against the river mole on one side and the steep cliff on the other. We've been proved right so many times. Please listen to us now.
Okay, thank you very much. Helen Hollick.
Before I start, I would say I am visually impaired, so please forgive any hesitation. I'll try my best not to. My name is Helen Hollick. I live in the parish and I object to the application. The pack you have been given quotes selectively from the local plan and NPPF, but makes very little reference to the social and amenity impact on the local residents it should have done. So how do the residents of Chitterham Holt believe that they will be affected? At a parish council meeting on 14th of September 2015, there was a vote by parishioners on the application. The result was none in favour, not one. and 68 against. That vote appears in the minutes of the Parish Council. An even better indication of the strength of feeling against this application came later. 43 resident households, that is around 70 people in this tiny rural settlement, dug deep into their pockets to fund 2 reports by the professional firms Pegasus and TPA. In total, we voluntarily paid £3,695 from our own pockets for this one issue. To put this amount into context, this is the equivalent to 142% of the Parish Council annual precept. The results of our commitment have been given scant attention, whereas the applicants' consultants have been quoted many times and their claims automatically reproduced as fact. Residents' consultants, our consultants, Pegasus and TPA, are mentioned in your pack but limited merely to representation listings. Pegasus, who are not traffic consultants, have been lumped together with the TPA in the dispute highways figures regarding the junction at the bottom of Newlands Hill. Why has our voice not been granted equal rights to those of the applicants? None of the many other imperative points raised by Pegasus and TPA have been drawn to your attention. We, the residents of Chitterham Holt, deserve much better than this. I started by referring to the local plan. This is from the ministerial introduction of the MPPF, and I quote, "People have been put off from getting involved because planning policy itself has become so elaborate and forbidding. By replacing over 1,000 pages of national policy with around 50 written simply and clearly, we are allowing people and communities back into planning. But for this particular application, so far, this has not happened. I would like to know why. Thank you."
Okay, thank you very much. Next we got Paul Blackwell, but just a sec. You're requested to speak later as chair of the parish council. We normally only allow people to speak once, so either speak as a private individual or...
Chair, he needs to speak as the chairman of the parish council. You can't take your hat off and say that you're not chairman of the parish council in that situation. If someone wanted to send somebody
I
else,
wasn't told that. I did ask, could I speak twice, and I was led to believe I could. Otherwise, I would have asked somebody else to have read this letter.
I'm sorry if you've been misinformed.
Can I read my... It's only a minute.
You can read both lots if you can fit it all in.
I can't read one now. I can't read both together, obviously.
You allow them 2 bites of the cherry?
No.
Yes. Sorry?
We'll spend longer arguing about it than we'll take
Sorry. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Blackwell. I am actually the chairman of the parish council, but this is my personal feeling, my personal letter. Dear all, my concern about the plan application is not only about the point of the narrow lanes and the roads, but also about the size of the application against the size of the village. If you imagine where you live, some in towns, some in villages, how would you justify a development the same size as your town or village being built next to yours with no further infrastructure? You would not. I do not understand why you would vote this through. According to the 2011 census, there are 169 people in Chitterham Holt. This application proposes another 152 bedrooms that could be 320 people, twice the population of the village. That's twice as many people with no extra infrastructure, plus the existing hotel and staff. I understand Highbullen's need to expand, and I welcome expansion, but not on this scale. We are currently being told there is no money from the council to mend our roads and potholes. We have also been asked by the county council, would we like to do Chapter 8 training so we can fix our own roads? If you pass this application, where is the money suddenly going to come from to deal with the wear and tear caused by the extra traffic over the years? We are going to have twice as many people in this new development than live in the village. The people working on this application do not live in the village, and it will not affect them in any way, but it will affect us. It does not matter how you present the application for 58 lodges and 16-bedroom extension, it is too big for the location. I understand we need to create jobs, but why should it be at the expense of the villagers? Has anybody thought about the impact on my life and the people in the village? The decision you take here will take a small amount of time. It will affect me for the rest of my life. Perhaps planning department could also advise councillors how they assess the impact on the village. I urge you to refuse the application in its present form. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And William Bowen.
Before I start, can I just check that you can all see me? Right. I'm Bill Bowen and I object to the application. I live just across from Newlands Hill and own the land that Highbullen said they could use for the new passing places. Highbullen have not made any offer to buy any land from me for these passing places. Highbullen are now proposing that traffic pass on the hill using informal passing places. This is already causing a lot of damage to my property and the banks are falling away and blocking the drains. More traffic will only cause more damage to my property and impact my human rights. County Council Highways say that this is my problem. It's a civil matter and nothing to do with them. They say I myself should do something to stop the traffic from damaging my property. They say the damage to my property from extra traffic from this application and the impact on my human rights is not for them to consider, but it's for you as the planning authority to take into account in your decision. Mike Kelly came out last Thursday to look at the damage to my property, to see how Highways keeps stealing my land by tarmacking over it, and to see that the fire engine and ambulance will not be able to pass other vehicles on the lower half of the hill, and to look at the dangerous junctions that the extra traffic will use. This was all videoed and with his agreement and is available on YouTube. He took many pictures as evidence, which I'm sure he'd be happy to share with you. Matt Collins has measured the visibility at the bottom Newlands Junction to be approximately 105 metres, and I have this in writing. And he judged this not to be unsafe. Cars travelling at the 85 percentile speed of 47 miles per hour for the road need 132 metres to stop. Matt's numbers. Bear in mind Matt's measurement of 105 metres visibility. Last Thursday, Mike Kelly actually measured the visibility at the same junction, and it's all on video. I asked you earlier if you could see me. Mike Kelly could not see me standing 45 metres away at the side of the road, like I know. He could not see me standing 60 metres away in the middle of the carriageway. He could not see me standing 75 metres away on the white line in the middle of the road. Visibility turning up the hill is only 92 metres before you are hit broadside. Bear in mind that one car every minute for 15 hours every day will be crossing this Newlands Junction. Applications for single dwellings have been rejected by Highways for this poor level of visibility in the past. We then went to the Kingford Hill junction with the A377 near Portsmouth Arms, where Highbullen say sustainable visitors should catch the train. This is the junction that SatNav will send visitors through to Rosemore Gardens, the Big Sheep, Milky Way, Clovelly, etc. Mike Kelly said he couldn't see beyond the wall at the side of the junction and that it was too dangerous even to measure the visibility here. Highways have not assessed this junction at all. There have been many accidents there, including a fatality. I most strongly urge you to defer this decision now and ask that someone else at Highways independently assess all the dangerous junctions of the main road network that visitors will have to use. You will then be able to make a decision based on the facts. Do you want the death of a visitor on your conscience? And do you want the council to be left open to negligence claims for insurance companies who will know that the safety of the junctions was not properly assessed for this planning decision? Thank you very much.
Okay, Andrew Coop.
Andrew Coop. I'm a Chittenden Holt Parish Councillor, but I'm speaking today as a private resident. I object to the application. The information presented to you in your committee report for this application is flawed to the extent that I think it would be unwise for you to make a decision based upon it. I'll explain why. Now, Mr. Kelly earlier made reference to a judgment in the High Court. It was this one, Mr. Justice Green, November 2016. It clarified the relative importance of the NPPF and local development plans.
The judgment says that under the terms of the NPPF, if a planning proposal is inconsistent with the local development plan, it should not be considered a sustainable development and it should be refused. In other words, local development plans trump the NPPF, not the other way round. So how does this application conflict with the adopted North Devon local plan? Well, first of all, policy TRA 1A says that developments which have an impact on the highway will only be permitted if they offer alternative modes of travel to the private car. The Highways Authority and the Planning Authority has acknowledged that this application will have an impact and that the only practical mode of travel this application offers is the car. Policy DVS 1A, which is your own policy which defines what a sustainable development is, says that a development must also conform to policy TRA 1A, which I've just quoted. Policy TRA 6 says that a development will only be permitted where the functioning of the road network or the safety of highway users is not harmed. Now, as you already heard from the other objectors, we don't believe that Highways have adequately assessed the road safety aspects of this application. They've only assessed road safety at one junction. They haven't looked at any of the other five that visitors to Highbullen will use. And as Bill mentioned, the junction at the bottom of Newlands Hill, junction at the bottom of Kingford Hill, there have been 6 accidents at that junction and one of them was fatal. Highways have turned down smaller applications than this on the basis that this road network can't support them. If the application does conflict with TRA 6, it will also be in conflict with policies ECN 8 and ECN 9. And notwithstanding what Mr. Kelly said earlier, policy ENV 11 says that a development should not harm protected species. But the protected species surveys, which Natural England said must be carried out before making a decision on this outline application, have not been performed. The committee report before you acknowledges that all these policies are relevant, but it doesn't point out any of these conflicts. Now, the legal judgment I referred to does allow the planning authority some discretion to approve applications which conflict with the local plan, but it also says that these cases should be the exception, and that the starting point for any application of the planning balance should be a presumption to refuse the application. This is not reflected in your committee report. In summary, you've been presented with a committee report which fails to accurately assess the application in terms of local plan policies, relies on flawed road safety and environmental assessments, and doesn't take into account a relevant recent High Court ruling in applying the planning balance. I therefore strongly suggest that you should defer a decision on this application until you've been presented with complete and accurate information on which to base a decision. Thank you.
Okay, and we
Sorry,
got...
Chairman, can we keep to 3 minutes? I'm all for hearing the public.
Yeah.
But
And stop repeating.
And start repeating.
A lot of repeating.
And we got Paul Blackwell again on behalf of the Parish Council this time.
Sorry, we've just said it. No, he's not speaking again, Chairman. He's had his opportunity.
No, he's had his chance.
Sorry, you said that he could?
Yeah, I think... Okay. I'm going to allow him to speak.
It's a very short letter.
In the
It just
interest
represents
of...
this is the Parish Council's view. Sorry.
What was a bit longer than the last minute?
This application continues to cause concern amongst the parishioners of Chitlamalt, Satterley and Walgley. 3 separate meetings of local community have been hosted by the Parish Council to listen to and respond to parishioners' questions, concerns about the proposed development. When the Council met on 24th of April, it resolved to object the above application. The Council will draw your attention to the points raised in the Council's previous response regarding this application. In addition, the Council would like you to emphasise the following points. The Council believes that the impact on the additional traffic through Chitlamalt to and from via the small, narrow and in main single-track road network, no matter how it be routed, would be excessive. Additional traffic through the centre of the Chitlamalt poses a road safety risk for pedestrians as well as the increased level of noise and air pollution. Newlands Hill is already a problem at peak times. To deliberately encourage visitors to the hotel to use this route is ill-advised. The lane is narrow, steep and even with passer places originally proposed, the Council believes it is unsuitable as a primary route to and from the hotel. During rain, Newlands Hill runs with water and suffers from excessive ice in winter periods. which covers the lower half of the hill. Whilst various attempts have been made to solve the problem, these have been largely unsuccessful as a result. There is obviously a risk for all road users. The proposed development will reduce the availability of the existing facilities to many of the parishioners of Chitlam Holt, Satley and Walkley. We remain concerned that the proposal will change the relationship between Highbullen and the local community for the worse. For the above reasons, the Council strongly encourages the Planning Committee to reject this revised application. Thank you.
Okay, now we come on to a list of supporters. Ian Alcock.
Good morning, Chair, Councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ian Alcock from AWP. I am not Highways Consultant, who's been working on this for over 2.5 years and have looked at all these various concerns. As you know, it's been under detailed consideration. We don't take that lightly. We've had detailed discussion with Devon. We've been to site with Mr. Bowen. We've looked at it in a lot of detail. The application, the permission, the development hasn't changed. All we're concerned about here is the access and the local lanes, which you know well. You've been to site, you know the locality, you know the impact that development has on local lanes. The proposed traffic movements haven't changed either. There's no significant difference here. I believe Devon have overestimated those traffic movements. I certainly believe the objectors in the room overestimate those traffic movements, but as our first speaker said, only time will tell. You know the long planning history of the site, and you know that the current owner is proposing some significant changes there, and as a result the previous proposals are not now fit for purpose, so we're prepared to revoke that. That will save around 200 vehicle movements a day, according to Mr. Collins' own calculations. So the resulting lower cumulative traffic impacts from the site mean that the passing bays on Newlands Hill just won't be required. We're not sure if they ever were, to be quite frank, but they won't be required. Key point about these consultants, us, TPA, whoever it may be, at the end of the day, Devon are the arbitrator. They have that rule, they're the local harbour authority, they mark my homework on a regular basis, and they need to be assuring you that they're making the right recommendation. They've made a clear recommendation and they've given us quite a hard time, as you know. Mr. Bowen's suggestion of 1 a minute, I don't know where that quite came from. Devon accept the planning authority have to make this decision about sustainability. Mr. Kelly's outlined that very well. We know we're in North Devon, we know there aren't very many facilities, but I've brought your attention, it's a leisure development. The facilities are on site. The hope we would have, if you're in Chitlam Holt, is that some of our residents will choose to use the pub, the local shop, and actually reinforce the local economy, rather than overawe it completely. I've therefore got no hesitation in concluding that the traffic impacts of the scheme remain acceptable. There's nowhere near this test of severity, as Mr. Kelly very well set out to you, and I commend it to you for approval.
Okay, thank you. We've got David Terrell. I hope I pronounced it right. And to save time, if you're sitting at the back, after that is Peter Rowe. You can come down, come up and come down the side. Okay, thank you.
Hello there. Good morning. My name is David Turner. I'm the General Manager at Highbullen. I'm reading the statement on behalf of Christopher Taylor. Chris Taylor. I have worked at Highbullen since 1993 and since 2012 witnessed a revival of Highbullen's fortunes, totally attributed to the considerable investment by Mr. Chapman since 2012. We have now 65 full-time and part-time motivated and conscientious employees. Should this application now be approved, it is anticipated that 25 more full-time jobs will be created. These will be found locally if possible and advertised further afield if necessary. Those from away now have the best staff accommodation in Devon, completed in 2016, again demonstrating Mr. Chapman's commitment to Highbullen. The reputation has gone from strength to strength, with many guests returning after years of absence. TripAdvisor and numerous tourism awards reflect this perfectly. Highbullen now hosts many prestigious events: Porsche Club of Great Britain, South West Conservative Party dinner, Northwest Journal Business Awards, and the Exeter College Annual Residential Course. Should the creation of one passing place and improvements of two others scupper the future of Highbullen? Further investment is essential to ensure profitability. Business has to involve to keep pace with guest expectations and market trends. Highbullen offers a great range of sporting facilities, and approval of this application will ensure the upgrading and modernisation of the gym, spa, facilities and pavilion restaurant. As a destination hotel, these quality facilities also ensure guests remain on site. Directions to Highbullen are on the website, and to encourage guests not to use their sat-nav and to use the various routes available. However, in 24 years of travelling Newlands Hill, almost daily and often with trailer attached, I have never found this road difficult to travel. Appropriate care is required, as on all Devon country routes. I recall one small scratch at the junction at the top of the hill, the 3 collisions on the hill with deer over that long time span, and have never witnessed any accidents on it. The presence of Highbullen adjacent to the village improves sales prospects of local houses. At least 5 estate agents advertise a close proximity to the hotel to advance their sales, and even for properties in neighbouring parishes. Approval will ensure Highbullen is profitable in years to come, providing for guests, staff, local suppliers and trades, and the villagers. Failure to obtain planning approval would mean an uncertain future for Highbullen and the many that benefit from it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Peter Rowe and Richard May after that, please, if he's...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have lived opposite Highbullen for over 10 years, and I have to say I have not been disturbed by traffic over that period. I support the application for 3 principal reasons. The first being the employment of young people, which should attract young people to live in the village and hopefully lower the average age of our community. Point 2. This development will be good for the pub and the shop. Indeed, the pub needs a lot more business activity. Thirdly, tourism is the main business activity in North Devon. Highbullen will bring money to North Devon, which will be spent on local business. In my view, a successful Highbullen is good for Chillenholt.
Okay, short and sweet to the point. Richard May, to be followed by Michelle May.
She's not here.
Okay.
I'm Richard May. I'm from Forest Farm, which is halfway between Chillenholt and the 377. I've lived in the village for 40 years, 20 of which I've served on the parish council. I've seen a steady increase in vehicles. 40 years ago I had 1 car, now I've got 4 cars in the yard. We encouraged the village, the pub and the shop. But if I drive through the village, I take my son swimming, I become traffic. I live on a single track road and I have never had a problem with oncoming vehicles. Over the years I have come to realise that there are 2 things you need on a single track road, which are large doses of courtesy and tolerance. Any increase in facilities would benefit all the local businesses and improve employment prospects for the young people in the community.
Okay, thank you very much. Stephen Tranquil.
Morning everybody, my name is Stephen Tranquil and I live in the parish of Chillenholt. I live approximately 800 metres away from Highbullen Hotel. For the past 6 years, as you can see, I've been off medically disabled, so I spend most of my time at home. I'm on the main road going through Chillenholt and I see most of the traffic that comes through, even during the Palazzo when that was going under heavy traffic. And my daily exercise was to walk to the hotel and back, which is on a fairly flat road. And where the road narrows going to the hotel, if any heavy traffic came along and they saw me, they were very courteous. They would stop and let me through, as most traffic would. My wife was born within the parish, farmers there, and they've been there for generations. My wife also worked at Highbullen Hotel when she was a teenager as a cook and as a chambermaid. My son also worked there up until 2 years ago, for 2 years, while he was at college and university. Now, to me, it's a big asset for young people and other people for working at Highbullen Hotel as an employment people, because young people find it a terrific job to find a job when they're very young and they only want it for summer terms. But a place like Highbullen is very good for them. The other issue, the speeding through the village. It's not Highbullen Hotel guests, because they're very unsure of the roads. 9 times out of 10 they've got very nice cars and they don't want to scratch them. You'll find that most of the speeding through the village are the locals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And next we got Frank Chapman.
Good morning. Frank Chapman, owner of Highbullen Hotel. I think it was 17 months ago here, the previous application for 58 holiday homes and 16 hotel suites. We had 17 objections and 10 favours. After hearing both sides of the story, the 15 councillors unanimously agreed the application. Here we are, 17 months later, with the same, having the traffic problem, theoretically, objections being withdrawn. I would make the point that when we built the Palazzo 2.5 years ago, which can accommodate 800 people, we have not, in the last 2.5 years, ever received one complaint regarding traffic, regarding noise, regarding light pollution. We haven't. What we have, we achieved a rundown hotel, 4.5 years, to a 4-star, AA 4-star hotel with 4 self-catering lodges, AA 5-star, many awards, and I think it's something that North Devon can be proud of under the circumstances. When I first put this application in for 100 holiday homes, the holiday homes were always the basis of, you know, it wasn't viable without holiday homes. Otherwise nobody would do it. We've cut that down to 58 holiday homes. We've given them back the 11 luxury apartments. But it still needs our holiday homes. It still needs them. Without it, I would say that hotels never made a profit, including this year. But once we get those holiday homes built, it'll be a different thing. We will carry on the developments which we've started. It needs a lot more doing. So I sincerely hope that you'll see your way clear to give us that approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Peregrine Mears.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. So here we are once again talking about Highbullen. Just to refresh your memories, back in 2013, the applicants and our firm started discussions with the local planning authority. We were asked at that time to present a master plan for everything that Highbullen needed to survive as a business, as it had been in administration under the previous ownership. That was to be contrary to the piecemeal approach taken by the previous owner. We did that. We received agreement in writing to the principle of 100 lodges at officer level during the pre-application discussions. So the application was made for 94 lodges on the basis that it was supported by the officers at that time. A significant compromise, the first one was made to reduce the number of lodges to 58 with 16 hotel bedrooms. That's what you approved unanimously on the 9th of December 2015. A further compromise has now been made with Mr. Chapman, the applicant, agreeing to give up a valuable permission for 11 apartments and 29 bedrooms. That is a major compromise. We are now at a point where the hotel needs the security of an agreement in principle from yourselves to to allow the further investment to be made. You've heard, and if you've been to Highbullen, you've seen it's a changed place now. It is much more successful. It has the potential to become the jewel in the crown of tourism in North Devon. Tourism and farming are the mainstay of our economy. What are we without that? So I ask you also to consider the voice of the people that haven't had a chance to talk here today, the 65 people whose jobs depend on your decision. Their livelihoods are affected. What do people do in rural areas if they don't work in farming or tourism? I ask you to give consideration to them, to allow the further investment that this decision will hopefully make, and to make a really positive statement for tourism in North Devon, and to also back the significant work done by your officers over the past 3.5 years, and therefore we would ask you to approve this application as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We got the local board member, Walter White.
Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I stood there when the previous application came, and I said very much that I thought this application was too many lodges, and if they needed to do a smaller amount, that might be looked on a bit more sympathetically, and I still have that view. There is no question. I mean, I travel to Chillamholt on various reasons quite often, and whichever way you go in, it is not very good. And members did not see the junction down at the bottom of Kingford, which isn't very desirable at all. How many? We've talked about the lodges. We got if it's granted, how many permissions will there be, Mike, in the hotel?
The full planning history is set out on the agenda.
Yeah. I just want to make sure members of
There'll be an extension for the hotel as part of this application, and 58 lodges as part of it as well.
16.
Sorry.
Yes,
that's right.
And are there any existing consents that have not been used in addition to that?
There's a extension to the brasserie is one that I think has not been implemented. That's not accommodation.
At the end of the day, it isn't just the 58 for lodges. It is in addition to the hotel, and maybe some more after that. So we'd be talking about vehicles that are in excess of the 58 anyway. There have been queries regarding the traffic measurements. I don't know who's right and I don't know who's wrong, to be honest. But certainly, I would like to think that the number of lodges would be a less number, and obviously that would do a lot of reduction in the vehicle movements, because the majority of this traffic is going to come through the centre of Chillamholt. I'm just wondering whether it might be sensible to clarify all the issues which have been raised at this meeting this morning. I might wish to speak again, thank you.
Okay, and we got the local county representative, Richard Edgeo.
Thank you, Chairman. As you say, I'm speaking on the highways impact as the local councillor for the Highway Authority, Devon County Council. As I've said before, there are 4 ways into and 4 ways out of Chillamholt, and they are all small, narrow and substandard for the additional traffic generated by a development of this size. As a result, at the last planning meeting, when this application was considered, the requirement for 3 passing bays was to be conditioned by a section 106 provision to be placed in along Newlands Hill. The Assistant County Solicitor has been out on site and seen the neighbouring landowners' title deeds and confirms that the land required is not adopted by the Highway Authority and is in private ownership. And as this is not this application now ignores this requirement for provision of passing places. It's been suggested passing opportunities exist. Those are on private land. They are not on highway land. The owners of the adjoining hedge banks, which have been damaged already by vehicles squeezing past each other, including large agricultural vehicles, tractors and trailers and lorries, do doing the existing deliveries to facilities in Chidley Holt, they are worried that when the hedge banks are further undermined and fall in, they, as the owners, will be required to make them good and repair them at their own cost. Devon County Council's legal department have suggested that curbs could be put in as a requirement of the Section 106 agreement to clearly show the extent of the highway ownership. But this, of course, will not stop vehicles driving over the curbs and doing further damage. Devon County Council legal department say this will be a civil matter, but the owners can't sue owners of vehicles which have contributed in the past to the consequences of cumulative damage. It is clearly not a provision of the National Planning Policy Framework that development allows damage to be done to adjoining owners' private property, as is the likelihood here. And this is for the local planning authority to decide. This is too large a scheme and should be refused, and a further reduced number of units considered to reduce this damaging impact. In my view, there is absolutely no reason why a more modest application shouldn't be approved here, and we see how it gets on, and what the impact is. They can always come back for more later. In addition, the visibility displays at the bottom of Newlands Hill and the road down to the A377 towards the Portsmouth Arms and Kingford Hill are still of concern as being far too short. Following the safety inspection by the planning manager last week, which Mike Kelly has referred to his visit, I've seen the records of that meeting. I'm astonished that there's no reaction to the fact that the visibility which was experienced then by our own planning manager is being ignored. It is not consistent with the report of my own authority, which shows considerably longer visibility displays. Yet our own planning manager has been there, and people disappear from view, even in a bright jacket, at a far shorter distance. And I'm told, oh, well, it doesn't affect the highways recommendation. I'm afraid that is not satisfactory. So there needs to be a deferral to allow a fresh Devon County Council assessment of the safety shortfall here, and it should be by somebody completely fresh to the subject. So I ask, as a minimum, members, that there is a deferral for this purpose.
Okay. Any comments at this stage, Mike?
No, Chair, I think that's quite simply, I again refer you to paragraph 32, and I've made detailed reference to the geometry of Newlands Hill, which is not material to this determination in your officer's view. And you've heard about the benefits of the scheme, so I've got nothing further to add at this stage, unless members want to ask any questions.
You two gentlemen?
I can make a mention at this stage, Chairman, if I may. The Director of the Planning, Environment and Transportation Services has asked me to go and have a look at the existing situation to possibly review what we've taken as an approach over the last 2.5 years. I went out to the site yesterday and I spent 2 hours looking at the immediate road network there. I looked at possibly 5 or 6 approaches to the site that we have. So we talk about 4, but in fact there are more, of course, that get lost in the maze of roads in that locality. I think what was quite clear to me was that the traffic generation as existing is very low. You know, I've heard a lot of mention today about, you know, kind of horrendous traffic on these roads, but it was extremely quiet. And I could say to you that there were a number of occasions and a number of roads where I was probably being passed by one vehicle every 5 minutes or so. Now, this wasn't in times of kind of quiet periods of time. This was actually in peak times during the hours of 4 to 6. So your starting point is to look at the traffic generation as existing. It's to weigh, of course, the traffic generation that's likely to take place here. I think you have a significant difficulty if you choose to refuse this number of holiday lodges without evidence of what may or may not be acceptable. who are we to judge that if we are saying 58 is acceptable, what threshold do you then use to say what may or may not be acceptable as a reduction on that amount? Quite clearly, if we look in the order of 4 movements which Mr Collins has utilised as standard practice of the Highway Authority, it's not unusual for us to look at that many movements per holiday unit per day. I think what's quite clearly happened here, reviewing the last 2.5 years, is that we have a transport consultant on board which regularly deals with Devon County Council in providing not just theoretical traffic generation, which the County Council will often use for a robust assessment, but it's gone one step further. It's actually analysed what practical movements are taking place physically on site in and around that immediate road network. And obviously that carries probably more weight than some theoretical traffic generation that we use often as highway engineers. So we have a robust assessment that indicates that the situation is acceptable. We have a more robust approach that indicates that the traffic generation is likely to be even less again. We also have a facility here which is quite comparable, and I know members of the public have referred to, the need to look at comparison sites. Mr Kelly touched on Ben Quarry, which I addressed to you last month, members. This is a very comparable situation. You have facilities on site where members of the public or users of that site will reside for some part of their stay. We don't suggest for one moment you come to North Devon and you spend your entire holiday on that site. What you tend to do is there will be occasions when either a morning, an afternoon, the occasional day where you stay on site, use the facilities. You're likely to go further afield and use the facilities either in the village of Chiddleham Hope, or you go beyond to the typical tourist destinations of Exmoor, Saunton, Croyd and the North Devon coast. So we recognise that you have that going on. I think there's also a strong recognition that because you have such a wide range of routes radiating out from this site, that it's fair to say that a lot of those movements can be dispersed. I also know that if you feel uncomfortable with using 1 or 2 of the junctions because of the substandard visibility arrangements, and we would be the first to recognise that we have a preferred standard of visibility. Where it is substandard and there's opportunity to avoid those junctions if you so wish, you can do so. We often look at obviously passing places in terms of what formally may be provided, but also those informal passing places which may well be on private land. The reality of the situation is that if a development gets approved here, not everybody with a private access arrangement is going to close up that access. Those accesses will remain in place and they will be readily available to highway users. So I did undertake a kind of further assessment yesterday. I did carry out a review of what's been said for the last 2.5 years, and I would fully endorse what we have said as a highway authority here, that there's no reason why this additional traffic, and we are talking probably not even 1 per minute, we are talking 1 every 2 or 3 minutes if you were to break it down that way. We are saying that that is perfectly acceptable. The road network can accommodate that, and we would reinforce what the highway consultant has said on behalf of the developer. So that's the position where I've come to review this. Brian Hensley, of course, as kind of development control manager, would have been here to present this today, but unfortunately he's had to attend another committee presentation. But that's where we are, in terms of highway safety and convenience. We don't see this as a problem at all.
Okay, over to members. Jasmine Chesters.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Didn't know I was going to be first. Well, there you have it. We've heard about the traffic. Now we've heard of Devon County Council. They seem to have no problems with the traffic. We live in an area with very narrow lanes. We all know that. We know there's places down the end of those lanes you need to get to. And we're all aware of the width of our cars and the length of our cars. Maybe people coming down that use motorways all the time don't. There's been no accidents recorded at Newlands Hill in the last 5 years, or so our agenda tells us. And while I have some sympathy with traffic generation, because we live in an area where we're very often in long queues, I feel that this application will bring advantages to North Devon, not only with the economy bringing jobs and things like that in, and tourists to spend their money here. I believe with the added luxury facilities that are going to be put in within this application, that it will be a benefit, and maybe visitors will stay on site more than going out and around. There are many conditions with this application. I do support this application. The 58 lodges, obviously they are looking, Mr. Chapman and Peregrine Mears are looking at viability, and the 58 will make it viable. I will support it, and I will even go as far as to give approval to this and recommend approval. The only thing I can think of is if I would hope that the hotel would send out maps to people travelling here. They're not going to have their computers in front of them while they're driving, with maps to give them the best route in to arrive at the hotel safely. I'll move approval on the application with all those conditions.
A seconder?
Yes.
I'll come to a question next from Frank Biederman.
Well, a couple of questions, Chairman, if you don't mind. Paul, one to the highway and one to the planning manager, if that's all right. Having listened to all of this, obviously we have got conflicting opinions, and we accept that Devon County Highways are the independent adjudicator, if you like. So are we saying that, I assume the traffic is a 60 mph speed limit at the junction of Newlands Hill and Kingford Junction, and as I understood it, there was a 40 metre visibility at that junction. Newlands Hill, I wasn't quite sure, I didn't quite pick up what the visibility is at Kingford. So are you as an independent confident that that doesn't propose any highway safety to somebody exiting Newlands Hill, cars coming at 60 miles an hour? Because I think the traffic movements are fairly irrelevant, to be honest. If there's only one a day, if they happen to come at the same time, you know, the impact's the same. So I mean, the question is, are you confident that poses no unacceptable risk to somebody travelling 60 miles an hour? And my second question to the planning manager, I think one that really concerns me is with the loss of these free passing places. And if I remember rightly, I voted in favour of this application last time, and one of the reasons, and it was very fine, was these free passing places and the impact on the landowners. Clearly, there's going to be an impact on a landowner here, and it's going to affect his amenity. If his land keeps getting damaged, surely it's not acceptable for us to expect him to take legal action if that impact's going to be there. I mean, surely we need to protect his amenity, and that should be a planning consideration. Thank you. That's just questions. I'd like to come back later.
Mark?
Certainly, I can answer the first one. Well, we would have to find, when you say protect his amenity, well, you can mitigate the impact in terms of the measures that have been set out in the documentation and on the agenda report. So there will be mitigation, but that doesn't extend to protection of private property. And if we were, as a planning authority, and as I've said, and I think I've stressed, I am sympathetic to Mr. Bowen's particular concerns about this, and I've seen it for myself. And I did check this with Brian Hensley as well at County Hall on Friday. I spoke to him, and I did say, well, you know, in your experience across the county, have we ever refused an application because there is an additional increment in terms of traffic generation that will result from a proposal, and that traffic, a proportion of that will be using a particular route. In this case we're talking Newlands Hill, and that will lead to, the assumption is that it will lead to further damage to the highway. But it's a very tenuous line of logic here, because we would have to have evidence. Specifically, we are considering this application today. We would have to be clear that this application generates a particular quantum of addition of traffic generation that will use Newlands Hill and will result in damage to that. And where does that put us? Are we likely to be able to evidence that, to suggest that we should be refusing an application on that basis? And I would suggest, whilst we have every sympathy with this particular concern, that to my mind is not a reason for refusing the application, although we do understand the concerns. But not in my experience ever have we refused an application because of the increased wear and tear on the local highway network.
I was talking about the land.
Well, and the land either side, of course.
Paul Young?
I've been involved in a number of situations in the past where this very issue has come up. Now, if you're looking at vehicle movements of an extraordinary nature, vehicles that wouldn't normally be permitted on the highway or need some kind of licensing arrangement, then that's something which the police have the ability to take action upon. But what you have is a situation here where legitimately vehicles using that road will increase, or those roads will increase. There may well be corresponding damage to the adjacent hedge banks. This is very akin, of course, to tractors and trailers that might be, moving along those roads, inadvertently causing some damage to the hedge banks. But it is quite clear that whilst it is an increase in vehicle movements that may be deemed acceptable by any decision that the planning authority may make, it is a civil matter. It is between the landowner of the hedge bank and any identified vehicle user that could be causing that damage. And quite clearly, that would be extremely difficult to identify an individual or individuals that lead to that damage. Possibly CCTV footage could be obtained, but a highway authority would not actively be looking to get involved in that particular instance, although we recognise that what we may say may prove it to be acceptable. Going back to the issue about visibility and how we measure junction visibility, of course, we have a prescribed set of standards that would be granting visibility standards in accordance with the actual vehicle speeds that we would be expected to obtain. Now, whilst we may have a 60 miles per hour national speed limit road, vehicle speeds are more in the order of the high 40 miles an hour, so it tends to be 47 miles per hour, 48 miles per hour. We need to judge visibility both in terms of looking at it to the near side of the carriageway in both directions. We also can look at it to the centre of the carriageway, and we could look at it to the opposing side of the carriageway. One of the things we have to take into account is, are you realistically likely to see vehicles overtaking one another at those locations? And if you are, you can of course look for visibility to the near side of the carriageway. If you're fairly confident that's not going to happen, then there's no reason why you cannot consider visibility to the opposing carriageway. Yes, we have to have full regard to accident data. There's no recorded accidents in the last 5 years of any significant note that I'm aware of. And therefore, whilst we accept there may have been accidents at certain locations in the past, we do not have to have so much regard to those accidents that may have occurred some time ago. And of course, what I said earlier on, in that you have a choice of routes here, that's what's critical. If you find it uncomfortable as a fairly regular visitor to this site, you don't have to use that junction. There are plenty of other junctions that are available to use if you so wish.
Okay. Sorry, Joe, just a quick one on that, because I mean, ultimately, I've said this at the last committee meeting. Where is the sat-nav taking people? Because visitors to the area are not going to know what's the best junction.
Well,
they'll do well to find it, never mind.
This is what I think tends to happen. When you first arrive at a facility that you are unfamiliar with, if you have a problem once you've arrived at that site, then you look at alternative destinations here. And also, I think it's important to recognise, as a highway authority, we didn't ask for any passing places to be provided as part of the pre-application discussions or in the early stages. This was offered by the applicant to try and address a perceived issue. It is a perceived issue. It is not an actual issue here, which is fundamentally of concern for us.
Okay, Glyn Lane.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, to me, Chairman, at the end of the day, is what we've got to look at here is, and to me, is the application taken as a whole, previously and now. I do actually cycle and drive these roads here, and I do actually agree with Mr. Young. The roads is quiet, isn't it, about it? I mean, I cycle very now, they are very quiet. I mean, to me, the only difference is from previously and now is actually the free passing places, and will they would adversely affect this application. In my view, on balance, I don't think they would. So, to me, I actually support what the recommendation is, but subject to, my view is, because quite honest with you, there was a sum of money here in public open space previously, which was approved, and I see in your heads of terms now, I see that's left to the planning manager. But my view is, Chairman, if we accept this application here, we should be putting back in the sum of money which is a public open space contribution on the heads of terms, because there's no difference previously than what there is now with the heads of terms, because the sum of money previously was £73,463. That is actually a benefit to the parish as a whole, and I think that sum should be included because it was in there and approved previously, and there's no reason why it should be left out at this stage now. So I would do an amendment to that unless they wanted to take that on board. If they're happy to take it on board, I'm happy to support it as it is.
Quite happy with that. Sorry, Chair, I thought that was sort of carried through with the recommendation.
Well, no, it says here,
but
public open space
not made explicit.
as requested by North Devon Council, that means you may not request it. What I'm saying is we should be putting that sum in this edge of terms, and if I'm happy to take that on board, I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
I'm looking at the proposal of that motion.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to take that on board.
Joe Tucker?
Well, excuse me not going up, but just to thank really Devon County Council, the three officers who naturally have supported what is this development, and to be clear and precise in what you're saying. And so naturally there are locals, people living in the village who have concerns, but we see this, I'm afraid, in many of these smaller villages. But if you're going to allow a place such as Highbullen to go forward and provide employment and create investment for North Devon, then you've got to allow this type of application to go through. And so rather than, you know, we've spent a long time. 18 months ago we spent hours here, and really there's not much difference between this and what it was 18 months ago, and the only difference is really these couple of passing places, and naturally the owners have given up 29 bed spaces, but it's good for Chiddle and Malt. It will be eventually. So there's no point in progressing gabbling on.
David Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Richard and Frank have said quite a lot what I was going to say, but there are a couple of points. I understood that there were some photographs taken of these passing places. It would have been nice if we'd actually had an opportunity to see them, because that is the area that I'm very concerned about. I mean, the economic case is clear, very clear. It will be a tremendous benefit to not just Chiddle Holt, but a very big impact on North Devon. But I am concerned about the transport getting there and so on. I don't know if there's any way that on the B3226 a warning could be made of the junction, because you know, if you say vehicles are coming, say from the Chumney direction at 47, 48 miles an hour, well, I doubt that. I think in many cases it'll be much higher than that, and it could be quite dangerous. I mean, I hate going up that particular Newlands Hill. I avoid it like the plague if I can, and you know, it would be good if we could still have those three passing places. And I would be much happier to support this if that was included, rather than just ignoring it. That's really what I do.
Okay, John Moore.
David, it's come up with that when an idea that I was going to sort of say, because I think that had those passing places been got in the first instance, we wouldn't be here today, because we'd already approved it. So it is about the passing places up that hill. And I think that when I was the county councillor, that the B3226, the signposts were removed from South Malton because they said there was too much traffic going down there and it was damaging the road and the edge bank. So, you know, you come up with two different tales, but maybe you don't remember that, but that's what it was said. And the person that brought it to my attention was the person that lives in the pub, or was the owner of the pub at the Exeter Inn, because he'd made up his calling cards and traffic was coming into South Malton and going on and not going that way. So I think that sometimes the highways have got a decision to make for themselves. At no time has the applicant asked the owner whether he would be willing to sell or allow for these parking places. It might well be now that we've got to this position where I feel that most of the people here are going to approve it. There may well be some give on the ownership to get those passing places. The last time I was at Highbullen, I was actually coming from Atherington, and I would not come up that road off the B377 because it is a very dangerous. So I did go to Kingsnipton and come back. And on coming down the hill, I mean, I don't know if anybody spoke about the gradient. I wouldn't like to think what it is, but it's probably certainly steep. And the last time I was coming down there, a young lady had to reverse, I think it was about 50 or 60 yards, and she hit the edge bank 2 or 3 times, so I can appreciate what Mr. I know she wasn't a very good driver, but having said that, when you look at the steepness of that hill and you've got to reverse downwards, it's harder than having to. So I would like to think that we could take on David's remarks in saying that perhaps it could go back to the landowner, and I mean, we're not saying we should refuse it or anything like that, but we could go back now, seeing that he sees that the situation is slightly changed from what it was, Chairman.
All right, Mike Kelly?
Just a couple of points really. The details of the recommendation on page 32 looks at submission of a construction management plan and a green transport plan, oblique travel plan, and appropriate signage of course would be part of that. So in terms of directing people, particularly in light of the sat-nav discussion we've had, that would be a sensible part of any resolution from committee. And again, I just emphasise that what perhaps has not been highlighted is the reduction. I think the applicant's transport consultant made it quite clear. It's a reduction theoretically of 200 traffic movements a day in respect of this voluntary revocation of the 11 apartment block. So, you know, it's quite an important concession. I think Mr. Chapman made it quite clear that it wasn't one that was easily relinquished, because it's obviously a capital asset worth a great deal in terms of the property. But nonetheless, that is being offered. That is a material change that needs to be taken into account. So I just want to emphasize.
Paul Crabb?
To be fair, no, sorry.
Okay. Frank Biederman?
Yeah, I'm desperate to move a recommendation of refusal, but I realise I'm not going to get that home. I guess that needs to be deferment, or whether there's any way that one of the movers of the motions. I really am concerned about safety, but you've got to take on board the highway. And I don't want anybody to think I'm negative to the scheme, because it's an amazing scheme and a huge opportunity for employment and everything else. But you can't put money over safety, and I am concerned about safety. I just wonder, is there any way, and I really do think this gentleman has spoken about the impact on his land. Is there any way, I mean obviously they've saved some money by not having to provide these passing bays. You know, is there any way that some 106 legal agreement can be put in place to, and I guess you're going to tell me civil matter, I'm almost reading Damien as I'm speaking, but you know, I just think it's incredibly unfair that we're saying you can use informal passing places, go onto private land, damage it, and expect that chap to go and try and find the recourse. If there is no way, I am going to move a motion of refusal, because I do feel that the impact on the immunity of the landowner is unacceptable.
Okay, anyone prepared to second that?
Just ask a question first.
Anyone prepared to second
that?
that?
I just want to ask a question first. Will that, Councillor Warden said that there should be tried to be negotiation on those passing places. If that could be a part of the, I'm not saying that we, if not, then I would second that. What I'm saying is we need to have some sort of negotiations, but I don't care what anybody says. We talk about, we know the area. Look, I do know. I travelled to Highbullen at one time playing squash when the squash courts were available. I know what the danger is in that hill, and if we could get those passing places, it would change the
Mike?
Well, just one point. We're not condoning the use of Newlands Hill or any other use by residents of Highbullen. I think it's quite important but that seemed to be an implication just now. No one's condoning it. Drivers behave as they do, and they do this not only along Newlands Hill, but the many thousands of kilometres of rural lanes in Devon. And this is not an isolated instance. We see it throughout the area, of course we do. So no one's condoning it. There is no basis in terms of planning for requesting the passing bays. We'll put that out there. So in terms of trying to negotiate a revised scheme that reinstates the passing bays, I'm afraid I don't think that would, I could provide any support for that. The only thing I would say is that we've got objectors and we've got applicant and owner here today, and if they're able to come to some sort of agreement themselves outside this room, then of course we would be very pleased about that. But it doesn't form part of the application before us today, unfortunately.
Take a vote.
So, there was a proposal. Anyone prepared to second it? Hang on a minute, Walter. Anyone second the motion of refusal? No, so that falls. Back to the ward member, Walter White.
Just a very brief, Mr. Chairman. There hasn't been very much discussion or any discussion on the route of the construction traffic, because obviously this is something which is going to affect Chilham.
It's in the management.
It's in the condition.
I know it's in the plan, but it's not been said here today. And I would like to know the route of the construction traffic, please, because people in here need to listen if it's in the agenda.
Mike, do you want to refer?
It has, sorry, Chair, if I may, it is a specific part of the recommendation on page 32, which is a construction management plan in addition to a green transport oblique travel plan, and that will be agreed between Highway Authority and the applicants. So whilst we might have some idea, we'd obviously take into account the reason why it's there, amenities of local residents. So it is a specific part of the recommendation.
It could be, Chairman, with respect, in consultation with the ward member, which will overcome
That's a good
those
idea.
issues.
Agree.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very good idea.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Right, I'll take the vote. The motion was put as per the officer's recommendation. Those in favour?
Just a minute, plus the parish contribution.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Don't somebody coming back next
Chairman, also to include the additional condition regarding the submission of lighting details.
Yeah.
Yes.
All happy? Those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Chairman.
And against?
1, 2, Chairman.
Abstentions?
1, 2, 3, Chairman.
Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much.
A
A 2-minute break, and anyone leaving?